Hello everybody. In this video we're going to take a look at how we can create an environment in Maya. But we're going to take a different approach. We're going to take a modular approach. By taking this modular approach, we'll be able to create a bunch of different sections of our environment that can be configured in lots of different arrangements. Now what we're looking at is a tunnel system, and I created the geometry in Maya and then brought it into the Unity game engine. So let's go ahead and go into Maya and get started modeling. To get started, I'm going to create a cylinder and I'm going to make it 8-sided, and then I will add some segments on the height. I've just deleted the caps, and now I'm going to duplicate this 3 more times so that I can start figuring out where the other tunnel segments that I'm going to be creating will need to connect. To create a turn in the tunnel, I'm going to use a torus, and I will also make it 8-sided. By making it 8-sided, it'll easily connect to the straight tunnel segments that I've already created. And as you can see, this will allow me to create a nice 90-degree turn to connect any of these tunnel segments. To create a T-intersection, I'll take this turning segment, duplicate it, delete some of the faces, and combine the two meshes, and then weld the verts together, as well as using the bridge tool to complete the piece. And going into component mode, I can adjust the vertices to get it just right. Next, I'll be making a 4-way intersection. Once again, duplicating the straight piece, deleting some of the faces, combining meshes, and then extensively using the bridge tool. To create a dead end, I'm going to make a sphere, which I'll make 8-sided so that it'll easily connect with one of these straight segments. I'll combine this half sphere to one of the straight tunnel pieces, and then we'll have our dead end piece. I need to combine the two meshes, obviously, and merge some verts, but that will complete the piece. To make my tunnel system more three-dimensional, I will add an incline. I'm simply going to duplicate one of the straight tunnel pieces, and then using my soft select, I'll create an incline. Making sure that the move tool is set to retain component spacing, and then either using snap to grid or snap to point makes matching up the openings of the two segments very easy. I think I'll flatten out the floors for this tunnel system. This time I'll use the Move tool, but without retain component spacing checked. This will make it easy to flatten the floors on all of the segments at once. Now that I've flattened out the floors, it'll actually be easier for me to just recreate the incline tunnel segment again with that flat floor. Once again, I'm going to use the soft select to do so. Since these tunnel pieces will actually be experienced from the inside and not outside, I'm going to reverse the normals on these meshes. Now that I've created the modular pieces, I will test them out. I'm using Snap to Grid to quickly and easily get them placed. As you can see, this modular approach to creating, in this case, a tunnel system can be quite powerful as it gives us the ability to create lots of interesting and unique new configurations. So now that we have all of our segments created, we'll need to move on to creating the UVs, or laying out the UVs so that we can properly apply textures to these pieces later on. Right now, if we take a quick look at the UVs, you'll see that they are, in fact, a bit of a mess. So I'll go ahead and get started on working on those UVs now. When UV unwrapping complicated three-dimensional forms, it's always a balance between seams and distortions. You want to have as few seams with as little distortion as possible generally. I generally do camera-based projections, oftentimes from, in this case, the top viewport, but oftentimes from the front viewport as well, depending on the three-dimensional form. And then I cut and sew edges to make sure that the whole model, that everything has its own unique UV space. So here I've completed my UVs for these segments here. And we'll just take a quick look at each of them along with their UVs. So here's the straight piece here. The tunnel turn. The dead end. My segment for going up a level or down a level. This T section. And my four-way intersection tunnel piece. Now I'm going to be using these segments to create a cave system, and I think to make it look a little bit more like a cave system, it'll be perhaps better to make it look a little less regular. So to give myself a little bit more geometry to work with, the first thing I'm going to do is do a mesh smooth on these. This will give me a little bit more geometry to work with, a little higher resolution. And then I'm simply going to use my soft select tool to create some variations. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is so that these pieces will still fit together well, so they'll still fit together exactly, I'm going to make sure not to touch the ends here, these end pieces. I'll leave those exactly as they are, but anything in between the openings of these pieces, I can pretty much do whatever I want. So I'll be using soft select for that. To make these segments more cave-like, I'm almost exclusively using the soft select. One thing I need to be careful of, though, is not to alter or adjust the vertices at the ends of these tunnel pieces, because they need to continue to join with all the other segments seamlessly. So I spent a little bit of time using the soft select to roughen these up, to make these pieces here look a little bit more irregular or look a little bit more cave-like. So we'll take a look at how that works as we try to piece these together a little bit later. In a future video, I'll go a little bit more in depth on creating materials for these segments here, but for the time being, we're going to keep it very simple. I've already created a normal map and a color map just very quickly for these, but as I said, I'll probably be revisiting that in a future video. Now, just a quick reminder, I want to just remind you, I mentioned it before, that with these objects here, the normals are actually pointing inward rather than outward. Just to give you a little bit better idea of what I'm talking about, I'm going to create a polygon sphere and I'll just scale it up. And you'll notice that its shading looks quite normal here, while these other objects are black out on the outside here, and then they look more normal on the inside here. Let's just take a look at what's happening here. So I'm going to go to Display, Polygons, Custom Polygon Display, and I'm going to turn on normals here and apply. So that we can see this a little bit better, I'll make the normals a little bit larger actually, and we'll apply. So you can see that the normals for this object, for this sphere, are actually pointing outwards. If we were to do the same to one of these segments here, you'll notice that its normals are pointing inward. And we'll go ahead and make those normals a little smaller so you can see that a little bit better. You can see that those are actually pointing inward. So the thing to understand here is that polygon objects actually have, the faces actually do have a direction. Another way that we could take a look at this would be to turn on backface culling, which I can do by coming over here to shading and turning on backface culling. And now you can see through the meshes here, but if we go onto the inside here, you'll see that these surfaces are in fact just one-sided. We could take this sphere, for example, and go to Mesh Display and reverse those normals, and now it is similar to these tunnel pieces that we have, in that the normals are now pointing inward instead of outward. So let's go ahead and create a new material for our tunnel pieces here. Go to my Hypershade. I'm going to make a Lambert, although perhaps it might be nice to have some specularity on it, but again, as I said, I'll probably be revisiting the materials for this in a future video. I'm going to go ahead and rename my material. And we'll go ahead and apply the bump map to these first so that you can see those before applying the color map. So I will go to the bump map, click on the checkerboard, click on File, and we'll assign a map a texture that I've created for this purpose. Here is what it looks like. This is going to apply a normal map, which is a fancy kind of bump map. So we'll go ahead and apply that. And we'll press 6 on our keyboard so that we can see textures, although I don't believe I have actually applied it yet to these objects. So let's go ahead and do that as well. I'll select the objects and apply my new material to them. And now you can see that the normal map has been applied to our tunnel pieces. Actually, I almost forgot something. Currently we have our normal map applied as a regular bump map. So bump maps are typically black, white, and gray values. A normal map works a little bit differently. So let's go ahead and select our material. We'll look at its up and downstream connections. And I will select its bump node here. And then in the attribute editor, rather than telling it to use it as a bump map, we'll change this to tangent space normals. And that'll change the look of it a little bit, but this will work better. It'll work better to set this as tangent space normals rather than a regular bump map. Now that we've applied the normal map, let's go ahead and apply our color map as well. So I'll return to the material, and under color, go to File, and here is the texture that I have created for this. This is my rock texture. I'll go ahead and apply that. And now we have our color texture as well. If we want to perhaps quickly test this, we could create a light. And turn on the lights in our scene here. I'll also activate shadows, although we don't really have any objects in here to cast shadows. We can of course create a polygon primitive if we want and test that out. But there you go. There's what it looks like right now. If we move the light around, you'll see how that affects the interior of our cave. I'll now spend just a little bit of time testing out the segments, making sure that they all join well together and without any seams. So using this system of creating modular segments that can be pieced together, I created this very complicated tunnel system here. In my next video, I'll be taking these pieces into Unity and setting them up so that I can use them in the game engine. So thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.